I think there was a moment where men weren't allowed to care about this stuff. Like we're like
Yes.
slack-jawed cretins. We don't care. We don't care how we smell. We don't care how our skin feels. We don't care about being groomed. None of that stuff. We just show up, and wear our underwear for 9 days straight and all this kind of stuff. Sorry, Barbara. Barbara, is this too much of a visual for you? Okay. Anyway, so getting back to the point, the gateway, Marcelo, is to say, hey, no, there's a permission structure. And we're gonna open that gateway with humor, like Barbara was saying, but it's actually a very serious conversation to say, hey, you know what? I'm a guy, and yeah, I want to be well groomed. There's nothing wrong with that. And so, just like brands like Dude Wipes or whatever these brands are that say, hey, there's a permission structure that men can care about these things and not feel less of a man, is a very, very powerful statement.
And today we have a very special guest, Marcelo Kertesz, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Manscaped. Now, if you haven't heard of Manscaped, it's a global men's grooming brand that's transformed taboo grooming into a mainstream self-care and cultural conversation. So we are very pleased to welcome to the show Marcelo. Hello.
Hi, Marcelo.
Hey. Hello, Barbara. Hello, Americus. And
This is awesome.
thanks for having me here. And yes, we are guilty of, making trimming down there a bit more popular in the U.S. and in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are hot coming right out of the gates.
Okay, you were going to give us like a warning. You weren't going to go
I know
right
it's a desensitizing techniques, sometimes techniques. Sometimes we have to start with that. So that's
no. You just okay. So let's start. Oh God, we might as well start off right away with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And we started talking about this before the show started, and then we couldn't stand it anymore. We had to start the show. So you made a Super Bowl commercial this year, right?
Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about that commercial in case not everyone in the whole world has seen it?
Well, first thing, if you haven't seen it, I urge you to go check it out.
Yes.
I think you'll be, at the very least, entertained. Because that was one of our goals.
Yes.
So this is a story of hair that, after being discarded, they feel sad because there is a very interesting human. It is true. Think about it.
This is great.
There is a very interesting human truth, which is when hair is attached to our body, we treat it with care. We use products, we style it, we love it, we touch each other's hairs. But the moment that it gets cut from the body, it automatically becomes the least loved thing in the world. It becomes a clump of hair in your drain.
It becomes
gross. Something that you despise and you hate, and it's gross.
Yeah, it's really gross.
So because we've been trimming hair from men's body, like all over the body, now with the face products, head products, nose, ear hair, we decided to flip the script a little bit and think about how do they feel. And, we learned that they miss us. They miss
okay, I'm tearing up here. I just have to control my emotions because discarded hair empathy is welling up inside of me. I'm sorry, Marcel. Please continue. This is amazing.
So the script is basically that, is like hair that has just recently been discarded, singing about how they feel betrayed, how they feel backstabbed by the people who used to love them just a few seconds ago. And, the message that we had to share with the world is that because Manscaped has started as a growing grooming company, and we transitioned into having like all this products for
let me just get that straight. You call yourself a groin grooming company?
We used to. That's our initial product. So when our CEO, Po Tran, founded this company, one of the things that I think he had this aha moment was, first, when he looked at all the brands that were serving men, both on the hardware like trimmers and shavers and all those things, and in the products, they all skipped a very kind of, unique to the male experience, let's call it, part of what being a man is. And it wasn't fair that no one was able to talk about it. So he said, you know what, we need to take care down there. So that was this huge white space. But he knew from the get-go that
This is
was
brilliant.
just the beginning.
I mean, the hits keep
Americus,
coming.
this
What's
is
up?
all you.
I know, this is beautiful. Go ahead, Marcelo. This is absolutely the white space. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
Yes.
no one was like, people were afraid to talk about it, afraid
Yep.
to, and to be really honest, like in most places, it's more common to see women taking a much better care down there, and men,
Yep.
are sloppy. Men don't retribute the favor.
Yeah.
Men are not doing the same. So we took on this task of
Yeah.
talking about this. So that's where the humor comes from, because humor
Yep.
was instrumental in having a conversation about,
Well, I
hey,
could see that. I could see that. If you're
Yeah.
going to have a
right.
conversation about this, which, like, first of all, that's a premise we don't whatever. But if you're going to do that, clearly the only way to do it is with humor.
Yeah.
I think.
100%.
I mean, I don't even think you have a choice. You have
100%.
to
Yes.
do it with
No,
humor.
I agree.
Yeah.
And and sometimes we forget like how powerful humor is, right? Because humor's like helps us break through hard conversations. Like
Yes.
humor
Yes.
suits, humor is
Yes.
memorable, humor
Yes.
entertains. If you have a hard day, like having a little bit of humor, and it even um it almost tells people that, hey, everything is fine. We can still laugh
Yep.
about it, like even
Yep.
in you're facing a hard situation. So
But
that
like
became kind of our brand voice. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
one of the things with humor, though, is not everybody finds the same things funny. So, I mean, that's always
But
humor.
that's all. Yeah. That's always going to be the case, right? In some
True.
senses, it's like,
And I think
yeah.
there's I would make 2 comments on that. One is, yes, totally true, and that's why we need to have a very well-defined audience, and I think Manscaped does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
And that helps.
Super Bowl, though, that's everybody.
Yes, because now, like, and the humor changes too. If you look
Yeah.
at our like humor trajectory, what
Mm.
we had to, the kind of humor that we have to deploy to talk about men's private parts is different than the humor that we deploy now to talk about,
Yeah.
shaving or trimming all over
Yep.
your body.
Yep.
And the other thing that is interesting about humor is you need, especially for a new brand like ours, who we are fighting with, how do you go say here in the US, send like people who have over 100 years old, right? Because all the brands on the
Centarians.
space,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
all brands on space, they have either 100 years or more. Like the youngest, if I'm not mistaken, has like 79 years old. Is
Are you
79
talking about
years old.
brands like Gillette or Schick? Are you talking about brands like that?
Like Gillette, like Wall, like Philips, Norelco, like Braun.
Wow.
They're
Yes.
all
Yep.
like,
Yep.
so we needed to, to break through. They can't talk our talk, and
Yep.
we needed to break through.
Yep.
But the
Well,
part that I
that's
was going to
good.
call out too is,
Yep.
we need to balance this with an obsessive quality on everything else. So that's
Yeah.
why you see like our packaging is like solid. The graphics are
Yeah.
nicely
Yeah.
designed. The product design itself, the product itself, like the
Yep.
sound of the trimmer when you turn on has to feel premium, has to feel well crafted, has
Like
to
a
feel
Bugatti when you turn the engine.
yes, because
I love that.
because
Yeah, I
otherwise
like that
you can
too.
be confused with a novelty product, like when you
Right.
buy like for fun, like those
Yeah.
fun gifts, like a $100
Yeah.
bill toilet paper.
Yeah.
If you're just humor, that's what you become. So for us,
That's what you become.
it's very important to be obsessive about quality. So the website
That
has
is
like a
so
very
interesting because you hardly ever see luxury or really high quality things like you're talking about play with humor. It
Yep.
isn't usually the way it goes. So it is kind of a paradox to put all of these things together. But maybe
True.
this
it
is a
is.
unique category.
And that's what we call in marketing differentiation. So
Yes.
to Barbara's point, I
And
love that point. I love that point.
and to be really honest, like this was Paul's vision, because when I joined, and I joined early in the company, but he already had that vision there. And I remember in our first conversation, he talked to me about this, and I'm like, those things don't go well together. I don't know. I don't know if I can
Interesting.
recall of a brand who has that. But then the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. And then, of course, after everything we did, I'm now a huge fan of the strategy, the approach, and I 100% am behind that. But I had my own like he was the one with that vision specifically. So
Interesting.
kudos to him
Yeah.
on that.
I think that's absolutely super fascinating. I'm going to step back just a little bit, Marcelo, and connect some of the dots because Barbara's always asking me.
Yeah. You connect all the dots you want. Go
And
right
she's like, he's
ahead.
going to say something about identity, but I'm not this time. I'm going to have like some restraint. But I love this point, though, and Barbara, jump in on this as well, because you said something, desensitization, which jumped in my mind, and I really love that because I think there was a moment where men weren't allowed to care about this stuff. Like we're like slack-jawed cretins. We don't care. We don't care how we smell. We don't care how our skin feels. We don't care about being groomed. None of that stuff. We just show up, and wear our underwear for 9 days straight and all this kind of stuff. Sorry, Barbara, is this too much of a visual for you? Okay, anyway, so getting back to the point, the gateway, Marcelo, is to say, hey, no, there's a permission structure. And we're gonna open that gateway with humor, like Barbara was saying, but it's actually a very serious conversation to say, hey, you know what? I'm a guy, and yeah, I want to be well groomed. There's nothing wrong with that. And so, just like brands like Dude Wipes or whatever these brands are that say, hey, there's a permission structure that men can care about these things and not feel less of a man, is a very, very powerful statement. That's just my opinion. What are your thoughts on that, Marcelo? Is that a fair characterization?
First, 100%. Like this is a conversation that we have internally a lot, and it's interesting that you call that out because in our discussions, one, it became very apparent that this was needed, right? Like what used to be masculinity, back 20, 30 years ago, you would not you would feel less of a man if you had your grooming routine or if you have products and skincare products and all those things. And we know first, this is not good for anyone, like not for the men themselves, not for the people who have to kind of, be around them.
With them.
And a lot of people had the desire to do that. So one of the interesting things
Can
that
I
we
just
made a
interrupt for
decision.
1 second?
Yeah.
While you're
Yeah.
saying that, to America's point and what you're saying now, it makes a Super Bowl a particularly good audience then, like.
Perfect
Yeah.
audience.
Yes.
To Barbara's
Yes.
point. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
Anyway, continue.
No, and that's what we kind of made a very clear decision like early on. We did not want to be a brand that is exclusively for the men who are already super evolved in their journey, nor do we want to be the brand that's just bringing, the guy who just washes his face with hands and water. Like we wanted to be a force towards a better routine, no matter where you are in your journey, because we found out that talking to men, there was not a one size fits all, one rule fits all. Like men from all backgrounds would have different routines, different approaches to taking better care of themselves. So we decided that we don't want to be preachy. We don't want to be too posh that, only the in the know kind of use us. We want to be like that older brother who is cool, is still a good brother, is been through stuff, can give you some tips, but not too preachy, not like your parents, So just like that resource. We want to be a force towards, hey, if you want to do a little better, we're here for you. Doesn't matter if it's just adding soap to your routine on washing your face or full body grooming and, and you trimming your nose hair, ear hair, and
Okay, we get it.
all the other things.
Yes. Oh my! I'm not even going to touch it. I'm just going to let that
I'm
one go.
avoiding the landmines. I'm playing ball.
Marcelo is like he's incredibly restrained here. He could be like just going big time satellite radio sort of, but we're cool. We're cool. So
Well, okay, so clearly this is to get attention, to get your name out there. It's all about getting your name out there, and it certainly does that. But that's just one piece of a whole marketing strategy. So how do you put all of this together? Like, how did you come to market? How did the whole thing start?
So you mean like the brand itself back in the beginning or the Super Bowl specifically?
Even back in the beginning, and then how you get to the Super Bowl, and then what you do to leverage the Super Bowl.
So on the beginning, to be honest, was quite simpler, right? We had a very, very unique task of talking about growing grooming. We had like one core product. So it was simple message. It was simple product offering. And there is the fifth grader in all of us that whenever we say balls, people, already pay attention and already go
Wow.
like
Yeah.
we're doing just now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are
So
rolling here. Yes, yes.
you,
We've got
you
the
can
ball
bleep
rolling,
if you
as they
if
say.
you need to, but
No, we don't need to
but
bleep,
true.
brother.
I was just proving the
Brother,
point, right?
You
So
are preaching, brother. Keep going. I'm in. I'm telling you. This is like,
captures our
as a
attention,
guy, I'm sorry. This is like gospel. It's like the
right?
sun, the clouds have parted, the sunlight's coming down. Sorry, please go ahead, Marcelo.
Okay.
So that with the humor made it a very simple task, and because of the white space, it was very effective. Now, what became way more complex is when we now that people know us for what our claim to fame, now that we have to communicate that we have way more products than you think, and that we have
You're
just
not
as
just a
good
flash in the pan. You're not.
exactly, and that we have just as good products for your face, for your
Yes.
head,
Oh,
for your ears
yeah.
than
Yes.
we had for where we started. So that's where Super
Interesting.
Bowl comes in extremely well timed for us. It was a
Nice.
combination of we reached our product portfolio kind of new state, right? In all our brand research, it was clear that we over-index in authority in the groin space, but we still under-index when we looked at face and
Yes.
and other places. So the
Yes.
signs were very loud and clear. That's one. Um, People who knew about us, mostly knew about us for our first product, and we
Yeah.
had a lot of things to say. Now, combined with that, we reached like a full, I would say, mature state of distribution footprint. We now sell at Walmart, we sell at
Wow.
Target, we sell at CVS, we sell at Best Buy. So we
Interesting.
are a true
You had to
omni-channel
be in that
company.
distribution to leverage the Super Bowl. If you didn't have that kind of distribution by the time
Yeah,
you went to Super Bowl, it would have been wasted.
Yeah,
I
that's fair.
100% agree. So that's why like the desire to go, to that stage was kind of I since day one that I joined Manscaped, we talked about it. But
Nice.
the combination of those factors is what made it like almost a no-brainer. Of course, if we are in a position to to afford it, because it's still nerve-wracking
Right.
on how
Yeah.
Yeah.
expensive it is.
Yes.
But it made total sense for us because we had a simple but very important message to deliver. It was a
Yeah.
message to fast track people's perception of the brand for those who knew about us. There's still a lot of people that, are being introduced to the brand still, and it's great that they are now introduced to the brand with a much wider product
Interesting.
offering. So, and,
Interesting.
the distribution, you can find us everywhere now. We are pretty much even split between our D2C business, our
Ah,
marketplaces,
interesting.
Amazon and other platforms in other countries, and our retail business. So perfect timing, perfect moment. What was missing was the perfect content because that's the hard
Gotcha.
part. Because when we
Gotcha.
made the commitment, we didn't have the content yet, and that's
Just
that
the
Okay.
that
idea of something funny, but something funny, that's a pretty hard
That's pretty.
thing to accomplish.
That's right. That's right.
yes, but it's not just funny, right? Because
Yeah.
we in this process, we had a couple internal teams, we had external agencies that we looked over 45 different approaches and ideas.
Wow.
And there was a
Wow.
lot of boxes to check. Like we wanted the products to be part of the story, but this is not a product story, it's a brand story. But
Brand story. Yep.
because it is, we have a message to deliver that we have all those products for all those different parts of the body. And because part of believing in that message is actually seeing that you have those products, but it's not about talking a specific product. We wanted a story that the products had, a reason to be there. Some of the
Interesting.
beautiful stories that we saw, they were moving stories. They were pretty funny, pretty cool. But those where product gets inserted like artificially, like, hey, here it
Yeah.
is, or
Yeah.
someone is holding, and we didn't want
Yeah.
that. We wanted a story that revolved around that idea of the products triggering something. And that's where we landed on this moment where hair gets cut, which is triggered
Hair
by
gets
our
cut.
products, and
Yep.
then all the emotional roller coaster that the hairs
Yeah,
those
that is
Yeah.
poor
cute.
guys
So
go
what
through.
kind of social media or 360 campaign do you build around this one spot?
Oh, we did a ton.
Mm.
One, like, you know, coming from a D2C first, we have a lot of like there was a space that we were very comfortable with. So we had a lot of content that we pushed in the day off, before, of course, pre-game, the day off. We had like brand exchanges. We talked with other brands about our spots, with brands that were at Super Bowl as well as brands that were not at
Oh,
Super Bowl. Um,
interesting.
we had a lot of uh, like meme content that we already knew that was kind of after you saw the
This is
spot, there was
beautiful for memes.
some immediate,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. And we were happy to see how actually we kind of just lit a fire on the meme side, and then a lot of, you know, organic memes with our campaign started to show up. Um, we also had like a week after, just recently, because everything is so recent. We had this auction with comedian Stavros, where we did like a collaboration where he shaved his body hair, and we made like a little monster hairball with his looks, and we auctioned
Wow.
on eBay.
And
eBay.
you
And
auction?
Yeah. There you go.
yes, yes,
That's beautiful. That's
and we
incredible.
and the money went to TCS, which is our partner, the Testicular Cancer Society, which since year one of
Oh,
Manscaped have been a great partner. We
How much
that's
actually
did
did
they
a
beautiful.
lot of.
pay for that?
Sorry.
How much did that hair
I
thing go
think,
for?
if I'm not mistaken, it was upwards of $500 for, you know, a clump of hair, a very nice clump of hair,
But
well groomed, but
well,
still a clump of hair.
that's funny. Yeah. I mean, from a charity perspective, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because these partners that you're naming have very synchronous fit with the brand and kind of the important point that you were making. So I think that's super interesting. Here's something for you, Barbara. Say this very quickly. Where's the groin growth going in grooming? As fast as you can. Uh, I'm stuck on that. Groin grooming. I'm just like, wow. Thank you for that nomenclature, Marcelo. But I think that part of the point here is that, you know, opening up this door and like creating this conversation and allowing
Yep.
humor to be a safe way to sort of let's start talking about this. And it's actually pretty serious because, you know, men have needs and all that stuff. So tapping into kind of an expression of identity that allows, you know, people to connect with your brand and starting from kind of a very private sort of conversation into something that is now a more broad permission structure is genius. And to keep leaning in on that, to Barbara's point, she's always using the point authentically is like, can I
Yeah.
stay within the brand and not come off as like, you know, just trying to try stuff randomly, but to build the brand voice, like you were saying, Marcelo. So I love that point that you're making.
Yeah, and you know, if you really kind of, you know, understand your brand voice, or sometimes they call like our superpowers, in terms of, you know, what the brand has, and for us, facilitating hard conversations became something that we had to develop first by, you know, a need, and then it became something that we actually got good at. So before this Super Bowl campaign, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but we had a pretty successful campaign too called Send Face Pics Instead. And this was one that, you know, it's not an easy topic. We know, you know, the epidemic of people sharing, and especially men sharing pictures of parts. And we actually did our homework, and we paired up with a team of science from a university in Canada, and we found good data that proves that if you send a face pic, it's way more effective than sending a picture of, you know, your private parts. Um, and
You needed
this,
data for that?
This is statistically
yes,
significant at p less than 0.00001. Yes, the face is much more effective. It's absolutely going to start a conversation. That's true. More than
and
the other thing.
two interesting things about that, just really quick. One is, to your point, Barbara, I might be off on the number like exactly, but it's like 90% of men think that they're gonna get something by sending a picture their private parts, and only 4% of women agree with that. So there is a huge gap or something.
That's a
I don't know if the
that's a big
numbers are
effect
exact,
size.
but there's a huge gap. But the interesting thing about this was, it fit a lot of things. First, remember I told you that we wanted to be a force towards moving men forward, like either by adopting new, grooming habits or hygiene habits or new routines, like one, or by just, better behavior too, without being preachy. So we need to have a sense of humor. We don't want to like talk down to man or anyone in this planet for any. And on top of that, we were starting to announce that we had products for your face. We were launching like those beautiful
Yeah.
beard and face shavers. So the Send Face Pics Instead campaign was a way to tap into culture, to carry a conversation that is more interesting to consumers than just talking about the features of my product, but at the same time helping deliver the message that, hey, that Manscaped that maybe you got to know from Go now, it's in the face, right?
Yeah.
So connecting all those dots to your earlier point is very important to us, and that's, I think,
Yeah, and I
is the hard
like
part
as
of.
you move
Yeah.
on. Yeah, as you move on to other things, which is like this big category where you are competing against very established players, you're coming in with, kind of an idiosyncratic approach in some ways. But the way you started out saying you also wanted to link it to luxury, to higher, and the humor could have backfired there because while it
Yes.
might work where you are now, it doesn't work as well once you get into that established area if you haven't linked it to that luxury high quality thing, in my mind. So I think recognizing that right from the beginning in terms of growth, which is what Americus was asking, makes sense because the growth from something humorous or kind of hard to talk about might not be as big as becoming more mainstream and high quality and like a different approach or
And it fits
So
also to Barbara's point, Marcella, just really quickly, it fits well with this notion of broadening masculinity and sort of
and good behavior.
rebranding the man,
Yes.
rebranding maleness, all of this stuff. And it's
In
sort of,
terms
it's a
of
nice
good
gateway.
behavior, though, I like
Yeah,
that a lot. Like
me too.
that's real. So let me just ask you, 'cause we're running out of time. Go figure. This is like such an interesting
Yeah.
topic. It's already time is up. But I noticed you had an interesting background for getting into this. So like, can you talk very quickly about your background and how you went from that to this?
Yeah, it's hard to do it quickly, but I will. I started my professional life in Brazil in advertising as an art director, creative, right? But I always had this passion for strategy. I wanted to learn more, and I felt that sometimes, especially as you are a young creative, you get like you are distant from the actual strategic and directional decisions. That's where I decided to take an opportunity when I had an invite to run creative and strategy for a presidential campaign back in Brazil. And it was a very special one. It was in 2002. It was a very, it's kind of almost like Obama 2008, very kind of hope was the theme, very uh, powerful campaign. After that, I went back to advertising, but then I had what I call the crazy years in my life, where I did another 5 presidential campaigns in different countries.
Wow.
So all in
Interesting.
all, I did 7 presidential campaigns, 3 of them in Brazil, other 4 countries. And then because I had that stretch, I was taking a year off, and that's where I landed in the U.S. and that's where I met Paul Tran, and that's where we started, this. So I don't know if politicians and private parts can be connected, but that's my background.
Geopolitics and grooming. It's a
That's my
natural.
background. I cannot. Yeah.
I love it.
So
That's
are
awesome.
But
you
one thing
naturally a funny person? I mean, do you like approach life with humor all the time? Just out of curiosity.
I try to be, and to be honest, like when you're running a presidential campaign and it's tight, it's very intense and tense, right? And one of the things, and that's one of the powers of humor that I learned and that I take for my life, is the fact that in the hardest days of a campaign, under a ton of pressure, we were still able to crack a joke, it reinforced that, hey, this is just one part of our lives. Our conversation, our relationship, it's still there. So I believe humor has
That's
that
nice.
power. That's why I try to take life, always with a touch of humor. And
Mhm.
one thing that I wanted to mention, because you mentioned, when you go to the face, we needed to elevate the humor, like you said, but also it was very powerful because, as I was talking earlier, on the older brands, they have a hard time having a sense of humor because they have their voices
Yeah.
established for so long. So
Yes.
one of the things we do here is, if we have a piece of content that one of those brands could deploy, that means it's not the right one for us.
Right.
And I'm happy to report that we are now number 3 in the U.S. electric shaving market. So we
That's
we already
shocking.
beat some
Wow.
of those
That's shocking.
traditional
Congratulations.
players,
Yeah.
with that approach. So
Yeah.
far, it's proving to be a powerful combination, and we intend to keep evolving, but doing it.
I
That's
just
awesome.
have to, that reminds me, Gillette made a famous campaign where they were shaming men. Do you remember that toxic
I did.
masculinity
Mhm.
campaign?
I
Yeah.
did. I did.
And there
Yeah.
was nothing funny about it, and it really kind of backfired. That
Yeah.
was like one of the most hated
Yeah.
campaigns. So your
Yeah.
point is really well taken, even when you get out of that area.
Yeah. Inclusive,
Yes.
anti-preachy, but using humor as the gateway to start the conversation in an authentic way. Very powerful. Very powerful.
Yeah, and with all the touch points that any brand has today, consumers can smell when you're being not authentic, or when you're too being preachy, or when
Sorry.
you're trying to say something that is not who you
Oh.
really are. It's not like
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
you have the voice to do it. So we are
Fair.
pretty careful with that. But it's always like, it's always nerve-wracking whenever, because we are on that line, right? So
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yes.
cool.
That's
Well,
awesome.
I can't believe it, but we're out of time. Marcelo
me
Kertesz,
too.
Chief Marketing Officer of Manscaped. Where can people go to find out more about you? Because you sound pretty interesting,
Yeah.
and your
Oh,
brand and everything you guys are doing at Manscaped.
that's a good question. I think maybe LinkedIn would be, but I that's a good question. I didn't have a good answer for that. But about Manscaped, manscaped.com is still a pretty cool website where you can learn
Mm.
about our products, our campaigns. There's a little bit of our bios there, but you just gave me an idea. Maybe I need to think of a place, if people want to know more
Yeah.
about where I'm coming from. So, thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for listening today. That's all we have time for. We'll be back next week. Till then, this has been Marketing Matters on the Wharton Podcast Network. We'd like to thank our producers, Dion Simpkins and Marissa Renna. I'm Barbara Kahn, here with Americus Reed.